Fire Service Data and Tech Talk.
Hey everybody, it's Eddie Buchanan with the Fire Service Data and Tech Talk podcast on fire engineering, on all of the social media outlets for fire engineering and fireengineering.com. It's April. It's time to go to the big show. FDIC is next week. When we look at this on the calendar, my advice to you, if it's your first time at FDIC, go get the app, man. You want to download the app, put it on your phone. It is really useful. It's a brand new application. It's been updated since last year. That's going to be kind of your roadmap on how to get through the conference. You definitely want to have that on your phone and make a plan. It's so much to see if you've never been there, between the classrooms and the workshops and the hands-on training, and then there's stuff outside out by Lucas Oil Stadium. You really have to have a plan if you want to get through that and try to see everything that you want to see. So go ahead and get the app, put it on your phone now before you get out there, and start looking through the class, descriptions and all that, and figuring out where you want to be when, because things are happening kind of all at once. So there might be 5 things you want to attend, and they're all at the same time, and you have to figure out how to do that. So Monday afternoon, I'll be out there. I'll be helping my buddy Bobby Drake, Chief Bobby Drake. John Buckman, and myself, we wrote this book. Be sure to get it. But we'll be doing a workshop on, it's called Creating and Refining a Fire Academy. So we'll be talking about fire training on Monday. And then on Tuesday, I'm doing a workshop called Operationalizing Data in the Fire Service. That'll be Tuesday morning. So those would be 2 places you can catch me. I'll also be at the booth at the bookstore on Thursday. I think that's at 1 o'clock. And then there's also a tech panel out at Lucas Oil Stadium on Thursday at 3 o'clock. So those are the places I'll be that week if you want to catch up and say hi. But make sure you've got your plan together. Can't wait to see you in Indianapolis. It's going to be a hoot this year. So this month's topic for the Data and Tech Talk podcast is on firefighter location and biometrics. So I want to give you a little background why this came up and kind of my history with this. When I'm a past president of the Instructor Society, right? So I've got a long background in fire training. And there was a case, a line of duty death case that was revolved around training back in New York in 2021. And there was a lot of scrutiny of these particular instructors that were working with a recruit or a firefighter student, I guess, that was in a SCBA maze prop, and he had a medical issue and ended up passing away, right? So I have no particular knowledge or personal knowledge of that case. But when I was reading about it, it got me thinking. I've been in situations where I've had firefighters that were in distress while we were doing SCBA training. And, they're in SCBA, they're buttoned up, they're on air, they're facing down, they're inside a prop. There's a lot of, how would you know if anybody's even in trouble, right? Like it's going to be very difficult for you to look at a firefighter and understand that they're in distress and have some mechanism for you to make, how to engage. You would think they would alert you that they're in distress. That's not always the case. We're unable or just don't want to, be the one that says, hey, I need a break or whatever. There are lots of reasons, but as an instructor, we don't really have a lot of tools to understand what's going on with a firefighter in that situation. You can take that out to the fire ground, and it's that times 1,000, right? I've got multiple firefighters doing multiple things out of sight where I can't see them, and there's a lot of risk there, that we could try to manage better. So I kind of got on this thing about biometrics, where I was talking to the ISFSI and different folks, like, how come we, NASA the astronauts have this stuff, how come we don't, right? So as it turns out, there is some technology available today. There are some firefighters that are using it, and fire departments that have deployed it. So I figured let's get them on the show. So I want to welcome my guest today to talk about these things, firefighter location and biometrics. I've got a great panel. I got Chief Jeff Hilligoss from Mattoon, Illinois. Chief, how you doing today? Want to say hello?
Doing great. Hello.
Give us a little bit of background. Tell us about your fire department and what's going on there.
Okay. Mattoon Fire Department. We are in East Central Illinois, southern part, south of 80. We are a community of just right around 17,000. Our department's 30 members. We're full-time, one of 2 full-time departments in the county. 30 members with an 8-man daily minimum. Our last year's call volume was a little over 3,400 calls for service in 2024.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to come on the show today. I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys are doing there. Then I've got Chief Dale Robson, Chief, Indianapolis Fire Department. Sir, how are you doing? Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Give us a little background on just where you're coming from with IFD and your involvement with this type of technology.
Sure. So I manage IT for Indianapolis Fire Department. We have 44 fire stations and 1,280 sworn firefighters. We now have a training academy, and one of the things that we're looking at is creating digital twins of every structure or every high rise in Marion County. So we've got some digital floor plans now over the top of Google and Esri maps of headquarters, Station 7, our training academy main building, the fire training tower, and our burn building.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you for taking your time today. I appreciate everybody being here. And then I've got my tech guy, Paul Kustin. Man, hey, Paul, welcome. And tell us the company that you're with and kind of the basics of the technology you do.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Eddie. So work with Ascent, co-founded the company with my co-founder, Alex Gorsuch, about 5 years ago near the University of Illinois in partnership with the Illinois Fire Service Institute. We learned very quickly over those 5 years that any solution that's going to be introduced to the fire service needs to be just wicked simple. It just needs to work. And over the last 5 years, we've gone from engineering really high-tech, sophisticated scientific projects that we won competitions with and got national recognition, to recognizing that the more and more fire departments that I would sit down and talk to command staff, the more and more I recognize that firefighters are starting to wear smartwatches on their wrists. And if we can find a way to take technology that's already in use in the fire station and operationalize it and make it useful for the fire department, then we may actually have a chance of introducing high-level situational awareness and military-grade technology into the fire service. So that's what we've been up to. I'm really, really honored to be joined by both of the chiefs here. I think they tell a very unique story on how over the last 5 years, technology has been kind of evolved and how integrations can help support the overall operations of the fire department. So thanks again for having me, Eddie.
Oh, absolutely. You mentioned a competition. I've heard this where there was, tell us what that is. Like, how does the competition work? Who sponsors it? Who judges it? What happens if you win? Give me the 5-minute brief on what that's about.
Yeah, actually, Dale, if you don't mind me, I might pass that question to you just because you were so involved in that competition.
Sure. So Indiana University's Red Lab partnered with NIST and came up with this first challenge. They won the bid to host the challenge, which included using the site at Muscatatuck. So IFD has an MOU with Indiana University, and we work closely with them and supported them with this challenge, which kind of helped them get the grant from NIST to run this. So $5.5 million in prize money. I think $4.5 million or so was awarded over the span of the challenge. And not only was I an SME and a judge, but I'm also the only judge that wore every competitor's device for the evaluation. So I got a pretty good grasp of how everyone was doing. And I want to say I'm grateful to all the teams for what they're doing to try to help public safety. And location tracking with Z-axis is really important. And that's really what the first challenge was about, was Z-axis and narrowing down location to less than a meter.
So now Z-axis, so that we're talking vertical, right? We've got X, Y, which is moving on a horizontal plane, and Z is going upstairs, basically.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. So real excited to see competitors like Ascent doing so well and actually evolving that product now into biometrics, which I think adds even more to the capabilities of the technology and what our incident commanders can see on the fire ground or even on the training ground. So obviously, anytime you have a large class of recruits, the more data that we can get on them and how they are doing physically can prevent them from being hurt.
Right. So this technology we're talking about, we can transmit biometric data along with location data and then visualize it in some way from a command perspective. Is that a fair, basic summary of what that is?
Yes.
And so, Chief Philigot, tell how is it? Give me like the gist of how you're using it there. You're in a kind of a small community application. What does that look like in your fire department? How do you use it?
So we've got 10 watches, with eight of them being used all the time. And five years ago when Paul came down and I got introduced to him and what their vision was, it was me being able to see where my guys were in the event that a Mayday was called really struck home with me. What you can't really put a price tag on what that technology was worth to me in reducing the amount of time that I felt if they called a Mayday, being able to see exactly where they were, going in, showing our RIT team where they are, reducing the amount of time that it takes, because something like 22 minutes was one of the last studies that I had seen. And it's not the first rescue team isn't usually, the successful rescue team of getting. I wanted to reduce that 22 minutes and give my guys every opportunity I could. And the location was what I wanted to use it for. Early on, it was doing mapping and all kinds of neat stuff. But the problem was I had to have my face in an iPad, and I didn't like that. I still want to be able to see the building. I want to read what that building is telling me, what that fire's doing. So it coming down to the watches to be able to see the location and then their biometrics for, catching some events. As we all know, cardiac's one of the, leading, causes of disabilities in our industry, that if we can catch it early and hey, you need to take 15 minutes, open up, cool down, and then get them back in, rehab sooner to stop, an event from becoming catastrophic, what is, huge in my opinion.
So we're just talking about a watch. Like there's no,
absolutely. Yeah.
I remember when the first thermal imager came out and you wore it on your head, right?
The first thing Paul showed up with and showed me was about the size of, our metal lunch boxes that we'd carry to school, and I was like, the guys, where are you going to mount this? On their helmet. Well, their head would have just, fallen over. So it's come a long way. And one thing that I have particularly enjoyed is watching the transformation from that big, box that they originally came with to listening to firefighters, and how we could best utilize, their technology, down to a watch.
That's amazing.
It's pretty impressive.
And Chief, at IFD, what do you guys do? You guys looking at location and metrics, or what's your application?
Yeah, so we're just doing some testing right now,
right.
And I would love to be in a position to get 80 of these and give them to each one of our recruits that just started fire school last week. So they're actually on the pad in the tower today doing drills, and it would. I know the EMS division would like that as well. It just comes down to funding, and I think we're getting closer and closer to that point where it's affordable for agencies to be able to get this technology incorporated into training to start with and then into operations.
So, well, Paul, what metrics, like if you're using a watch, what metrics can you transmit? What's possible? I assume, like, I know what, I'm a nerd, so I track my sleep, and, we've got pulse and what level of sleep you're at, and the noise. My wife and I debate who's snoring that loud, but, we can see certain things through the watch. What can you see from that in a firefighting perspective?
Yeah, great question. So we learned very quickly that this is just a Samsung Galaxy 7 watch. If you open up the Samsung Health app, or if you open up like your Apple Health app, that is the fundamental capabilities of the hardware of the device. However, we have also learned by spending enough time in the fire stations that just because the hardware has the ability to produce that kind of metric doesn't necessarily mean that for the firefight, that's what the firefighter wants to share, nor does the incident commander care to get all of that information. So we've tried to really consolidate it to just being physiological alerting, in that you only want to be notified when something wrong is happening. Understanding a firefighter's BPM isn't all that telling until there's an issue. The analogy that we like to give to the firefighter themselves is, think about going to the gym and you're running on the treadmill. When you take your hands and you put them on the treadmill and you momentarily are consenting, that treadmill knows your BPM at that exact moment. But the moment that you take your hands off that treadmill, the treadmill doesn't remember who you are. It doesn't remember what your BPM was. It doesn't know anything about you besides the fact that you're no longer giving a BPM. So from the firefighter's perspective, we've gotten buy-in from the vast majority of our end users because they understand it's a life-critical device. I'm wearing this for the potential mayday. We hope it never happens, but if it does, at least we now know X, Y, and Z, or I guess lat, long, and elevation, your location, as well as your physiological state. In the event that you're sitting back at the station and you're sitting on the armchair and you're stationary, you're not moving, you're not in the burn tower, but all of a sudden you're running 210 BPM, that's an issue. So these are the kind of things that we recognize it's going to take time for the fire service to adopt all of the potential for kind of physiological alerting and biometric data collection. But we're starting, just like I said with that treadmill analogy, we're starting simple. Let's start detecting cardiac anomalies first, and let's make those actionable. But let's also do it in a way that protects the firefighter, protects the city, and protects the department, in that none of the information as it stands right now is stored. It's all built in a fire and forget platform that in the event that some firefighter does have an event, we can at least send out the notification, but there is no historical record that's going to be used against the firefighter. And I think that's a key gap that we need to address as an engineering team to determine how much to introduce at what stage of the product's development.
So that was when I first started asking around about this type of technology. The first roadblock I hit was, the HIPAA and, personal information and all the things, right? So I like the term fire and forget. So I get that analogy, but is there value or can a firefighter maybe opt in? Like, I want to wear, like, I can see two schools of thought. I only wear this when I get on the rig, like when I'm strapping in my seat and I'm getting ready to go to the call to put on my watch. I mean, that's one way to do it. But it seems like to me, you're losing a lot of value in monitoring your resting heart rates and building some sort of profile, right? I would be into consenting to something like that. Like, I would like to have that baseline. What are the nuances there? Like,
and Eddie, that is the exact kind of mindset that we look for in some of our early movers and early supporters, right? It's the same way that I'm hoping Chief Rolfson and Chief Hilligoss feel about the roadmap of what we're building. That's what we're building towards. But let's start with the reality of the situation, which is firefighters have no accountability right now.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start crawling before we start walking, before we start running. And to me, the concept of just putting something on my wrist that says, oh, this is engine 27, seat 2 for the day. It's de-identified the wearer, just like putting your hands on the treadmill. But eventually, the firefighters are going to start asking the questions. The firefighter is going to start saying, hey, I got my Apple Fitness or my Samsung Health app, and it can tell me all about how many steps I've taken and what my sleep is looking like. Is there a way that we can get this onto the next generation of watches? Well, absolutely. That's the way that the technology is progressing. But we have to be very disciplined about how we introduce technology into a space that has 100 years of tradition unimpeded by progress, right? And firefighters who hate two things, right? Change and the way things are. We're not trying to fundamentally change how a firefighter fights a fire or deals with a medical call. We're also not trying to fundamentally change how an incident commander runs their scene. But in the event that there is a problem, we want this accountability tool to be that kind of first point of information. It's like your aid to your IC. Hey, there's an issue, and here's where they're at, and here's how they're doing. And if we can start there, and firefighters can get behind the idea that, hey, I am going to wear a watch while I'm on shift, and I understand that it is transmitting my location and currently my BPM, but it's for my well-being and it's for my safety, then just like how the PASS system started as an independent system that eventually got integrated into the SCBA, just like the radio was originally kind of a luxury tool and now most firefighters have them, it is how technology is adopted into the service. And Ascent recognizes that no matter how much we want to accelerate that adoption and offer all the best and the greatest, it's going to take time for us to implement it right. So let's take the time to do it right.
So I get you can set basic parameters, I guess, thresholds that would set off an alert. Like what are we talking about? Like is it just a general anything above like 150 we're going to alert, or is it based on age, weight, or is it normed out in any way, or is it just like a hard number?
Yeah, so that's kind of to the department's discretion. Obviously, right now we can just hard code some thresholds. Say, anything over 200 is an issue. Anything below 50 is an issue. That's kind of to that crawl, walk, run analogy. That would be the crawling. That's like kind of the base functionality, right? The next stage would also be setting some basic thresholds, taking into account age, weight, height. Those are factors. The long-term one would be a full integration to do longitudinal, right? So you can kind of see the different offerings that are in the product roadmap. But as it stands right now, just any sort of alerting is much better than nothing at this point.
Right. Well, it goes back to my point with the recruit. If I've got him pinned, he's buttoned up and I got him in a maze someplace, I don't have any, it's better than what I've got now. Right now, I got nothing. So, and I got to tell, many years ago, back in the 1900s, I had a recruit one day out on a confidence course, and he falls over, he pops open his coat, takes his mask off. I can see he's in trouble. I walk over to see what's going on, and he goes, "I'll be okay in a second. Just let me pop this nitro." That's okay. Get this guy off my. How did you get here? And but that just goes to show. I mean, we need to have some kind of. That's before we had medical screening, like I said, early 1900s. Back in the day. But I think this is an essential piece of technology that's going to really make a tremendous difference. Chief Hilligoss, have you set any thresholds for biometrics, or are you just mostly focused on location?
I right now it's primarily location, because the watches get wore by individuals. They don't have their own to set that up. So the goal for me is location. I do like the biometrics. I like to be able to anticipate, if something is wrong, and catch it early. But again, right now that would have me with my face in an iPad, and I'm not tech savvy enough yet to. I'm not there for me. I don't like looking at a pad when I'm running a scene or an incident. I want to be able to see what is actually going on. And that was one of the concerns of my guys with the biometrics was, me having the ability to see what their heart rate was. And we caught some, feedback early on that some grumblings that, the firefighters, like Paul said, we don't, like the way things are and we don't like change. They thought I was just going to be sitting looking for a reason to sideline them, and I was like, no, that this is not, the intent at all. And, once we had the conversation of, listen, cardiac, is the leading cause, of incidents in our profession. Why would we not want to catch something early? And, once they realized I'm not going to be sitting there looking at that, constantly to look for a reason to, pin them up. That's not the intent of it at all. So I did get, there was a little bit of controversy with it when we first started. We had turned the biometrics off for a while because we were trying to see if that had the battery life. So having the product early and being in this pilot, has given us the flexibility to play with stuff like that to help Paul and his team to try to get, the battery life to last as long as they possibly could, which they're now up to. We've got them, they're up to 16, 17 hours currently. So, we'll be bringing the biometrics back because I feel that is, an important feature, an important part. And when they realized I'm not sitting up here in my computer watching to see what their resting heart rate is and stuff, I don't have time for that. So it's just trying, to get them to buy in, and it's hard for them to argue that, cardiac I'm looking out for their best interest, and it's hard for them to argue that.
Well, absolutely. I was going to ask, how did the street take it, when these things roll out? And of course they sounds like they responded as we might expect.
Oh yeah. At first. And then, it's once they see how I've used it. So our neighboring town, Charleston, they have it as well. That's our other, full-time department in the county. We respond to each other. We send a RID engine to each other's town. So I'm able to see their guys when they show up on our scenes, and then their chiefs are going to be in charge of the RIT operations once they arrive on scene. So now they can see, where my folks are, their folks are. It's a pretty awesome tool.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So currently, right now, our main focus is the location,
right.
And it's been a game changer. Just that's something we've never, been able as command, knowing where they are in a structure. I mean, other than knowing, they're in there somewhere. but being able to watch them maneuver through, and see a pretty general area of where they're going to be located should trouble arise. That's something we've never had before, and it's pretty great tool to have.
Awesome. Chief Ralston, so the IFD has been known as, they've been on my radar as kind of the leaders in firefighter safety and health, going back years, like CPAT. And, you guys have been out there on the edge for a long time, really pushing that boundary. What's the vibe? How do you think IFD is going to feel about, when you guys get this finally rolled out? What's the attitude, you think? How do you predict it to go?
Well, I think we're going to have a lot of the same issues that Chief Hilligoss has already faced. So only multiplied.
Right.
So it's a heavy challenge, and as you know, and that's why I feel it's important that we start this in the training academy with recruit classes and instructors, and you gain some confidence from that standpoint, and gives us more buy-in.
Right. Yeah, sometimes it's generational change, right? You got to let a generation cycle through. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm one of the older guys, and I'm all for it. So
yeah.
Yeah, I will say that my younger guys that are more technology driven, and I haven't had near the resistance from them.
Yeah, that seems to be a kind of a trend, that they grew up with an iPhone or an Android or something in their hand. So there's not a foreign idea.
So yeah, Chief Rolfson's plan of getting it implemented in, the academy early, where it's, becomes second nature, for them is a great plan.
Yeah. Can it do, Paul, maybe you can tell us, like in the roadmap of this technology, is there any ability to record like toxicity, exposure to the environment, those types of things? Is that something you see in the future?
It's absolutely in the kind of roadmap. Natively right now, the Samsung Galaxy 7 does not have the hardware able to do that. But it is definitely something that we've worked closely with Samsung and partnered with them about the future roadmap for their technology plans, as well as even independent systems that maybe aren't digital, right? Even just using kind of like enzymes and other chemicals as a way to understand what's gotten underneath the bunker gear. Those are all things that we're exploring. But as it stands right now, we don't have an offering for that today. But this is exactly the kind of conversation that happens in almost every fire station that we go to, right? Firefighters understand the value proposition of having an accountability system, and the concept of having it also tied in with the wellness of the firefighter seems to kind of address two problems with one solution. I think the other thing that we've learned very quickly, and I think is represented pretty well on this call here, is the fact that we have Washington, D.C., the United States Air Force, Milwaukee, on the exact same platforms that we have folks like Matt Toon and Charleston Fire, right? So by using third-party hardware, it is a lot easier to scale a solution for the fire service with a name like a Samsung watch that everyone knows Samsung. And, if a watch does go missing or gets busted or gets eaten, we can replace it with existing Samsung watches. Because it's an existing device, it's also a lot easier to service. 90% of our issues can be resolved by turning off the device and turning it back on. We've also made it operational to the point that it's locked in a kiosk mode, so the firefighter can't really do much else with the device. So honestly, one of the biggest complaints that we've gotten so far is that firefighters start their shift, they put their radio on, they put their watch on, they go about their day. At the end of their shift, they had forgotten that they were wearing the device, and they go home with it. And to us, like, that's mission success, because the firefighter now has forgotten that they're wearing an accountability tool, and it's already integrated in their operation. So that way, when it does matter most, and they actually are fighting a structure fire, or there is, God forbid, a mass casualty event, they also have forgotten that they're wearing their watch, which is when it's going to be used. And I think that's the most important thing that we've learned since the first competition hosted with Chief Rolfson down in Indiana.
The reason I ask about it is that I was the admin chief where I retired, and we did my last 5 years in that position. We did 5 line of duty death paperwork situations where one of them was traumatic, but the rest of them were all medical and, cancer deaths. And one of the most challenging things for us, unfortunately, we got pretty good at it because we had a lot of practice, but I don't recommend that approach for anyone. But to be able to document exposures is really a big deal when it comes to making that line of duty death claim. And anything you can get, we can capture the incidents, but if I could show that you specifically were exposed to X, Y, and Z, that goes a long way to making that case for those benefits for the family. So, I might feel uneasy about the chief looking at my resting heart rate, but this is about your family, man. You want to, if I could have that technology and use it in a way that protects your family in case something happens to you, that's well worth any inconvenience you might find from somebody looking at your data or whatever, So I'm excited to see that technology come down the pike because I've sent state troopers out of my office with like a wheelbarrow load of binders of trying to prove somebody, of their exposure history. So this will be a next level tool we can use. It'll be fantastic. So where do we see, tell me about how does this go for the common? I'm with Chief Hilligross. That I like to watch the building burn, right? I don't want to be looking down at a tablet, and I don't want to be sitting in my truck. I'm old school, I guess, a little bit dinosaur in that way, but I want somebody to watch the building burn. So I'm a strong advocate that I think the command position is a multi-person function. You need an accountability technology officer of some kind to play with all the stuff, somebody to watch the radios and all that. And then you see somebody to be the tactician to watch what's happening with the building. Big fan of that. But how does this information come into some sort of common operating picture? What are you seeing in your command post at an incident? How does it look? Whichever.
So I guess I'll hand it off if that's okay. I wanted to start by just saying, I think we made the initial mistake as a company of trying to build our own software. Just like every other company that's trying to solve a problem, they want it on their screen, their software, right? But what we found out very early on was that there is a incredibly robust military-grade common operating picture called TAC. The Tactical Assault Kit, the Team Awareness Kit. It's got a bunch of different names, but what's most important is that it is robust, field-tested, and in use by major DoD agencies. It was created by AFRL and is used from day-to-day operations to the inauguration to dismounted operations. Thousands of contributors, hundreds of companies. It is a huge ecosystem that exists. And the best part is, besides the hosting costs of actually getting devices on there, you can go to tac.gov right now and make a profile and log in and have the software. So we found out very early on, it did not make sense for us to double down on developing our own common operating picture and our own software when programs like TAC exist. The other benefit of TAC is that it's agnostic to the actual viewing device. So you can have it on an Apple phone or an Android tablet or a Windows computer or desktop. As long as you have the right credentials to log into the server, you can see dots on map and get alerting on almost any platform. So on that topic, actually, Chief Hilligoss started with an Android version of it, then went over to Apple. And with that Apple integration, he can also use other software on the exact same screen. And then Chief Rolfson evaluated TAC as a common operating picture against other common operating pictures in tandem, and could probably speak to the pros and cons of both of them.
Have at it, Chiefs. This should be interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm also on Indiana Task Force 1, FEMA Urban Search and Rescue Task Force, and we used TAC for several years, and I think 2018 Hurricane Florence was the last time we used it, and then we switched to SARCOP, an Esri tool, using survey 123 quick capture. So both products there's differences in both of them. The simplicity of SARCOP is a little better right now, and but at the same time, TAC allows you to see real-time locations of everything. If you're in a network denied area, which we usually are in disasters, you're not going to get those real-time locations until you upload the data when you get to someplace where there's satellite connectivity or what have you. So also you have other tools. You've got a lot of vendors out there like First Do that has their own common operating picture that they built, their command module. So being able to fuse technologies between different vendors and having them have these MOUs where they work together or partnerships, I think is important so that we can affect more firefighters. And I think Ascent's one of those companies that's been willing to work with just about anybody.
Chief Hilligoss, tell us what was your perspective on that, on the common operating picture?
So our commands have been fairly simple. This is one of the first technologies that we've had to assist us in a command role in the command structure. With only having 8 personnel on duty, during the day, if I'm able to get there first, I'll be command. 90% of the time, my officers on the engine are the first, officers there, taking command. That we have not utilized technology very well up until now. We don't have the personnel to assign them in that role. Our command has been a board. Each shift, they put who's riding where, and then the command board would get passed to me, when I take over. So we've always been very, very simple, if you will, when it comes to accountability and using any type of technology that's available out there for us. And a lot of it has been cost as well. We needed to, put money elsewhere instead of the, fancy, some of the fancier technology. So this is our first real run at having advanced technology at our fingertips in a command role setting in my 25 years with the department. So we're still learning. We're trying to learn and see what works, but works best for us with this advanced technology.
To make sure I understand it, so you guys are using the TAC system, right? TAC.gov, is that, and it's just on an iPad.
Correct.
And then Paul, you've integrated that tech so that they can see the firefighter locations on that iPad. What else? What are the missing parts? Like, how does the dot from the watch get in the pad? Is there any other hardware or software required?
No, so that's kind of core to our offering, is that the watch goes directly to the server. It doesn't need to pair to a phone. It doesn't need to connect to a Wi-Fi network. It can operate completely independently without having to start the system, press a button, calibrate it. It just works. And I think that's the core value proposition to fire operations. The moment that you have to introduce any sort of operator interaction, firefighter interaction with the device, it won't happen. And we kind of learned that the hard way shortly after the first competition with kind of piloting a first few of our modules, to which both Chief Hilligoss and Chief Rolfson were privy to early on, was that our original system had a button that you had to press. And that button was the biggest barrier to us scaling the technology stack. When it comes to the common operating picture itself, though, part of the reason why we picked TAC as our base is because fire departments like Mattoon don't have common operating pictures, don't have fancy softwares, as he put it. So the fact that we could get a city like Mattoon up and running with a .gov software helped those departments move faster. But then there's other departments like Indy, for example, that do have other software integrations. DC did as well. We actually just had the honor of helping support Washington, DC during the presidential inauguration. And for that integration, they wanted us to push to ArcGIS through Esri. So we were able to show the same dot on map on ArcGIS through Esri. We just did some work out in Southern California with the wildland fire that have been happening out there. To that integration, a lot of California is on tablet command. So we're pushing integrations to tablet command. I just actually met with Andreas from First2 down in Miami. We're starting integrations with First2. TAC is obviously special to us. One of our biggest customers is obviously the U.S. Air Force, so we do always support TAC integrations. But as the middle name of our company implies, like our goal is to just help accelerate the adoption of smartwatches into the service. And if that means integrating with other software, we're open to it. Since this is a public podcast, I did also want to put that out there, though, that when we push our information to a third party, that sometimes is out of our hands because it's up to that third-party software on what they want to do with it. And I am a betting man. I do think that TAC will continue to be the go-to common operating picture for public safety. You get big states like Texas and Colorado who have state-sponsored TAC programs. I genuinely do believe that when push comes to shove, the problems of the fire service are universal across every single department. Budget, recruitment, and retention. Those are the two common problems that every fire department has, period. Then the order goes XYZ, health and wellness, safety. But
Right.
the number one concern is budget. And to me, you cannot beat a government software when it comes to the flexibility of the value proposition of showing accountability dot on map and push notifications, which is why Ascent has chosen TAC as our base software. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk about TAC.
Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of it.
well, it's a big deal. TAC is available to everybody. So I think that, if you're listening to this, no matter what size fire department you're in, that's something you want to put on your radar. And, I've had the SARCOP guys on the show too. We did an episode, I think it was preparing for the big one or something like that. We were talking about the hurricane responses and, how they use the SARCOP platform for managing that. So the watch is going just straight to satellite? How does it hit that? How does it hit that network?
Yeah, so LTE is the base. I do want to put the caveat on for example, we were out in the wildland urban interface. If you're in an LTE compromised environment, we do have partnerships with satellite providers. So think like Starlink or Somewhere Labs, or even some of the primaries like T-Mobile, FirstNet, AT&T, Verizon are starting to offer satellite services. We can use that as well. Another thing to Chief Hilligoss's comment about battery life is we're also starting to play around with Wi-Fi networks a little bit. If the watch recognizes the Wi-Fi network of the station, for example, it can dynamically adjust its refresh rate so it's not drawing as much power if the device is in the station, which you may not care about every 10 to 20 seconds knowing the location if they're at the station. So these are things that having the ability to connect to other networks is helpful, but it's not required, right? And I think that's the key here is that when we ship out a pilot kit, for example, to a fire department to let them evaluate the system, it just works out of the box. It's already connected to a network. You don't have to change anything about that watch in order for it to work. But if you did want to connect it to networks and so forth, it does have that capability.
Amazing. So tac.gov, if you're listening to this and you didn't catch that, is tac.gov, right? Am I right?
Right.
That's certainly something you want to go investigate. If you don't have access to a common operating picture platform, well, you do now. So you can go out there and access that. That's a great takeaway all by itself. As we turn the corner, getting ready to wrap things up, I'd like to talk about where do you see us in 5 years? What do you think the future of this technology might look like 5 years from now? And I'll start with Chief Hillig Officer. We'll go around.
I think it is going to end up becoming an NFPA standard. When Paul was in my office 5 years ago, and watching this transformation, one of the comments I made to him very early on is, "You're onto something big, and you are going to get offered a lot of money by certain." There's going to be either Scott, MSA, some of our big players, Motorola, somebody is going to offer you a lot of money. If you want to serve the fire service as a whole, you hold out, because I think within 5 years might be a little too soon, but I definitely think within less than 10, it's going to become an NFPA requirement that this technology is in something.
Like a pass device. It took a few years for a pass device.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When I first started the pass device, you just didn't, you untied the clip so you could leave the clip on the pass device, and then look at the transformations that we've come from with that. So
right.
I firmly believe it's going to become an NFPA standard, and it's going to be out there for everybody at some point.
Outstanding. Chief Rolfson, where do you see us? Where 5 years from now? What's going on?
Well, I think in 5 years, you're going to see a Samsung watch or similar device issued to every firefighter as part of their personal equipment. And that way, we don't have to worry about them taking the device home. That would be my goal, is to make sure that every individual has their own device to take care of. And I also see that those devices with Bluetooth, with other technologies that would give us further insight on maybe air quality. What's the air like around each unit on fire ground or any major incident? And you can determine whether or not you have a low oxygen area and maybe you need to move your resources. So technology is moving so fast right now. The question is more of, do we have the money or the ability to keep up with it? So, and then having the thought, the forward thinking to leave budgeted funds available so that we can integrate this technology for our firefighters.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of data beyond the air brake, right? Like we always manage, we pay close attention to response times. And as soon as we hit the air brake, we stop measuring stuff. So I'm excited to see where not only the location and biometric technology might go, but in the other equipment too, the SCBAs and the apparatus. And there's lots of data that we could use to really understand how to improve operations. And we're just starting to scratch the surface with that. And Paul, where do you see it, man? You're put your wizard hat on. Where do you see us in 5 years, 10 years?
I mean, I know we've talked a lot about traditionalism and change, but I will say firefighters are very used to change. Actually, change that happens within a moment's notice on the scene. So firefighters are ready for change. I just think it's on to the companies and the technology providers to introduce that change in a way that is reliable, robust, and doesn't fundamentally change fire operations. It's taken us 5 years to get to the point to recognize that, wow, firefighters are wearing smartwatches. But here we are, and we've recognized that that is the right path forward. I would imagine 5 years from now, I'm still working on the same thing, and I haven't sold out just yet. And I'm at some concert or something, I got my kid up on my shoulders, and I see some first responder wearing a Samsung watch. And I said, we did that. And if we can accomplish that, using a Samsung watch pushing to a government tax software with no Ascent logo visible, that's mission success to me.
That's amazing. And I noticed when I was researching the technology a little bit, like I saw some things that were, like building scanning, and there were other things that were out there on the, fringe of what's possible. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a young man. I got my whole career to work on this, and we got one of the best damn engineering teams that you can get out here in the Midwest from the University of Illinois. So we got a lot of things cooking, a lot of things that are in our product roadmap. Smartwatches are just the beginning.
Right. It's exciting stuff. And like I said, what I appreciate most about it is it yields a lot of information with very little button pushing. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of things for me to hold and click and do. And I mean, you put it on and go. That's really what makes it work from a tactical perspective. It's really an important piece. Any parting thoughts before we wrap up today? Anything? What else you got? Anything before we go?
I'm looking forward to the future, and when Paul first came to me, I will be the first to admit I am technology disadvantaged big time. When I got promoted to chief 5 years ago, that was the most I have done. I've done more technology stuff in the last 5 years with computers that it's really opened my eyes. And to have a team like Paul's that is so focused on firefighter safety and trying to put products that make our jobs better is pretty refreshing. It's nice to see.
Chief Rolfson, anything before we go?
I would say don't wait. Don't wait for the next technology to come along. Let's get engaged now in the technology and help push the needle forward.
Right.
Hey Eddie, one more thing. One thing that I did that I looked into was, for smaller departments, maybe any department's size, I went to my work comp provider and explained what this technology was, and I got a $10,000 grant to start this through our work comp. So don't be afraid to go down some rabbit holes that you may not think are going to be worthy, because we got help through our work comp insurance.
That's a pro tip right there. That's a good idea.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's certainly worth the price of admission right there for that little tip. That's great. And Paul, will you do me a favor? Will you share with the team that's doing this work how appreciative we are that this really does make a whole big. This is going to matter as far as firefighter safety and being able to locate firefighters quickly on it during an emergency, but then also tracking them downrange. It's going to make a big difference to the families as well in the long term. So please share my personal thanks and appreciation for their work.
Well, I'll only reciprocate. I mean, we're thankful to be working with folks like Chief Rolfson and Chief Hilligoss, because we wouldn't be able to build this in a vacuum. We need to build it at the fire stations, and the firefighters are the ones who understand their problems the best. So we're just happy to be here to help solve a problem for the industry.
Well, I really do appreciate it. Thanks everybody for taking the time to come on the show today. Really interesting stuff. I got notes, things I'm going to go research some more and keep working. So we'll keep, we'll stay in touch, and we'll maybe check back up downrange and see how it's going with everybody. So thank you for being on the show. And that is a wrap for this episode of the Fire Service Data and Tech Talk podcast on fire engineering. Be sure to check us out on all the different social media outlets. Fireengineering.com is kind of the home base. If you want to reach me, you can find me at, I'm over on X or Twitter or whatever they call it now. At Data Tech Talk is the handle there. You can find me on LinkedIn, just under Eddie Buchanan. And of course, there's a Facebook page for the Fire Service Data and Tech Talk. So be sure to reach out if you have ideas for the show, give us feedback. And otherwise, we'll see you in Indy. Everybody travel safe to FDIC. We'll see you next month.
Fire Service Data and Tech Talk.